Webinar now. Welcome to this Legal Aid New South Wales Law Week webinar, Navigating the System. My name is Bridget Barker and I work in the Community Legal Education branch at Legal Aid New South Wales. To begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which we are broadcasting today. For me, that is the Widjabul-Waiable people of the Bundjalung Nation. I would also like to pay respect to elders both past and present and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining this webinar today. Your presenter today is Christina Nashi, a colleague and solicitor also with the Legal Education branch at Legal Aid New South Wales. Christina, thank you. I'll hand over to you now so you can begin the presentation.
Great, thanks Bridget. Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We've got a lot to get through today, so let's get started. So the aim of today's presentation is to help you understand how to make complaints and dispute decisions that impact you. Legal Aid New South Wales has a head office in central Sydney and 25 offices and 2 satellite offices across New South Wales. We go to around 250 outreach locations. We provide free legal advice about criminal, family, and civil law issues. Even though we are a state service, we also help people with federal legal issues like family and immigration law. A person does not need to be a citizen or a permanent resident to get legal advice from Legal Aid New South Wales. We also have lawyers to help you at many courts and tribunals across New South Wales, as well as fact sheets, and resources on the Legal Aid website to help you with various legal problems. I'm now going to briefly discuss 3 steps to help solve your problem. So first, try to discuss the problem with the person who made the original decision. Many problems can be sorted out easily and quickly if you raise your concerns with the decision maker. You can also get help like through mediation, especially for issues that involve other people rather than agencies. The second step is to use internal review. If you are still unsatisfied or if you prefer not to deal with the person who made the original decision, find out if the agency has its own system to review disputed decisions and what you have to do to apply for it. This is known as internal review. Internal review usually involves a more senior officer in the agency reviewing the original decision. In some cases, you will have to try and resolve the problem using the internal review system before you can seek external review. If the agency doesn't have its own internal review system, or if you are not satisfied with the results, you can pursue your complaint with another body outside of the agency which made the original decision. And this is known as external review. External review is provided by specialist and general tribunals, the Ombudsman offices, and courts. So how does external review work? The review body considers the merits of the original decision. The review body also comes to its own conclusions as to the correct or preferable decision in the circumstances. It may decide to agree with or vary the original decision, ask the decision maker to reconsider or set aside the original decision, and substitute it with their own. External review via the court. A court considers the lawfulness of an administrative action or decision rather than its merits. This means the court considers whether the decision is legal rather than correct. This is known as judicial review. The person bringing the case must have standing, i.e. the legal right to take legal action, usually because they are directly affected by the decision. There are 3 main grounds the court must consider in this circumstance. The first is procedural fairness or natural justice. This means the court must consider whether the decision maker acted fairly. The second is judicial error. This means it must consider whether the decision maker acted beyond their jurisdiction or exceeded their power. And the third is error of law. This means it must consider whether the decision maker interpreted the law incorrectly. External review via an ombudsman office. An ombudsman is usually the oversight body when it comes to a complaint. An ombudsman can assist to resolve your complaint by investigating the process if the agency does not change their decision or offer a better explanation of the decision. Do you need a lawyer for this? Usually not, but there may be duty lawyers or advocates available to assist you to present your case, for example, at a specialist tribunal. Now we're going to look at a case study that explores the concepts discussed today. So Jim has been experiencing discrimination at his local sports club. There are many ways people can deal with discrimination, both formally and informally. The most important thing to think about before deciding which approach to take is what the person wants as an outcome. One option is to raise the issue directly with the person causing the problem. Bringing along a friend or family member may help if the person causing the problem is intimidating or threatening. Another option is to write a non-abusive letter or email explaining the effect of such behavior and what can be done to fix the problem. To deal with the problem more formally, many organizations, professions, and industries have dispute resolution schemes that people can make complaints to. Another option is to make a complaint to the Anti-Discrimination Board or the Australian Human Rights Commission. Tips to remember when making a complaint. Generally, complaints must be in writing. First, complain to the original decision maker rather than to an external body. Identify the resolution you want. Provide complete and factual information. Provide more information if requested to do so. And remember that there are time limits on starting legal action. So who can you complain to? Well, there are various different bodies. So when complaining, for example, about government departments and government employees, you can either complain to the Commonwealth or state ombudsman. For banks and other credit providers and insurance companies, that would be the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. For complaints about energy and water providers, you would complain to the Energy and Water Ombudsman, New South Wales. For telecommunications service providers, you'd complain to the Telecommunications Industry Ombudsman. And for Revenue New South Wales, that would be the Hardship Board. With regards to complaints about public schools and public school teachers, that would be the Department of Education. For complaints about products or traders, that would be the Department of Fair Trading. For employers, that would be the Fair Work Ombudsman or the Fair Work Commission. For government employers, that would be the Industrial Relations Commission of New South Wales. For the police, you'd be complaining to the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission. For discrimination, as touched on in the case study, that would be the Anti-Discrimination Board of New South Wales or the Australian Human Rights Commission. For complaints about Centrelink decisions, you'd go to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and for immigration decisions, that would be specialist tribunals.
Christina, we've just had a question about where people would go to for external review with issues about toll fees.
So with toll fees, essentially, what I've tried to do in the past would be to call Service New South Wales and find out which company actually owns that particular location, that particular toll, and then you'd have to speak with them directly. Usually they should have an internal review process. I'm not exactly sure if when taking that further, if the internal review process is not successful, where you would take that. So I'll actually look into that and get back to you. But thank you for that question.
Thanks, Christina.
All right, thanks. So tips for handling government decisions yourself. So the first would be to act quickly. Try to find the name and the position of the officer responsible for work on the case and try to discuss the case with the officer who made the decision. Work out whether it is a state or a federal decision. Try to obtain the reasons for the decision if possible and select the method of review. So now I'm going to just go through a second case study here. So Bill is struggling to pay his gas bill. He reaches out to his provider to notify them of this and asks if he can access their customer assistance program under their hardship policy for customers who can't pay their gas bills. His provider refused. There are many ways people can deal with this problem, both formally and informally. One option is for Bill to ask to speak to a manager or senior person in charge about his problem. Another option is to write a non-abusive letter or email explaining the effect of such behavior and what could be done to fix the problem. Another option is for Bill to complain to the Energy and Water Ombudsman New South Wales. The Energy and Water Ombudsman provides a free, fair, and independent dispute resolution service for all electricity and gas customers in New South Wales, and for some water issues as well. So can a lawyer help? Law Access New South Wales can refer Jim and Bill for an appointment with their local legal service. The lawyer says they can help by explaining the dispute resolution options available and outline which body is the most appropriate to lodge the complaint with. The lawyer may also assist in drafting and submitting the complaint to the relevant body. So now we're going to do a true or false quiz, just a few questions about the previous sections, just to gauge your knowledge on the previous sections we just went through. Please write your answers in the chat if possible. All right. So the first is, the first is try to resolve the matter personally. You should write an abusive and threatening letter or email.
Everybody's been listening really well. We're getting a lot of false.
Okay, great. That's correct. That's false. So in this instance, as we said, you should write a non-abusive, non-threatening letter or email when possible and try to take that first step before going any further. All right, so the second, you should always try to resolve the matter personally before using the internal review process.
Everybody's saying true for this one.
Great, that's correct, true. You're all listening.
We've just had a comment here. It depends, because if you know resolving the matter personally may not lead to any results. I guess too, and you probably said this, Christina, that if there's a bit of conflict or a difficult relationship, then sometimes, depending on the circumstances, internal review may not be something that's comfortable, I guess, for people.
Yep, that's correct. Thanks for that, Bridget. Okay, so the second last one, you should always write down times, dates, names, and what was said or done as soon as possible.
Everybody's so fast. It's the response everyone's giving is true. Thank you.
Great, that's great. And the reason why I say try to do it as soon as possible is because if you wait a couple of days, you might forget the name of the person you spoke to, etc. So try to write that down as soon as possible so you have all the information if you do want to make a complaint or take it further. And the last, external review is provided by specialist and general tribunals, the ombudsman offices, and courts.
Okay, we're getting lots of truths here. Won't be a minute.
That's correct. So that's true as well. So as I discussed, there are many different bodies that provide the external review process. So the best thing to do in this situation would actually be to get legal advice about the different avenues to make complaints and which body is the most appropriate to hear the complaint.
Christina, we've just had a comment from someone, which is I guess, an important issue to raise. I have a mental health condition. I have severe anxiety and find dealing with people extremely difficult. I know many other people who have similar issues dealing with organisations such as Centrelink to be very difficult. Many people go without doing anything. My experience with Centrelink is they have KPIs that make it difficult, and they find many applications rejected. What you're saying here is helpful, but it's not helpful to people like myself. So I guess what we would say is that in that circumstance, approach legal aid about getting some assistance, because that's when a lawyer can intercede for you and take those steps on your behalf to allow you to assert your rights, and therefore you don't have to deal with those issues personally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you for that. That is a really good point. And as Bridget said, contact legal aid, get a lawyer to help you if you've got, mental health issues or anxiety about dealing with those types of complaints. And I understand that can be quite stressful. That's where legal aid is there to help.
And another audience member has made another helpful suggestion that you can ask to speak to a psychologist in Centrelink or an advocacy service for support. Thank you. It's great having so many engaged community workers and audience with us today. Thank you for all your contributions.
Definitely. Thanks for that. So that sort of ties into what we were saying earlier. So call Law Access New South Wales if you need a referral to a legal service, and they'll connect you with your local legal service, whether that be a legal aid office or a CLC.
So we've just included this slide to let people know that we have another webinar next week on this topic, and it's actually going to be a panel of representatives from various different Ombudsman services. So if you are available, you can join us for the webinar when you'll hear from a representative of each of the different Ombudsman services next Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's the 24th of May. You will receive this same information that's on the slide in a follow-up email that we send after the webinar. So that will allow you to click on the link to register for this webinar if you're interested in hearing from some of the different Ombudsman services directly. Christina, are you ready to take some questions now?
Yeah, for sure.
So Edward, who raised the issue that the fact that people can contact a psychologist at Centrelink, has also just commented that the psychologist can contact people at home, so that might be of assistance to people. Another person has said, I've also been rejected by external review agencies, including Legal Aid, because I can't follow the usual processes independently due to cognitive barriers. The psychologists in Centrelink have also never called back. It's very difficult, and often advocacy non-government organisations don't ever get back to you. Oh, it's unfortunate that you've had those experiences. We can't speak for other organisations, but sometimes I think especially non-government organisations are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Another person has said that the AUWU, Australian Unemployed Workers Union, exists, and it's a by donation service. Is there anyone else that had any further questions about the process of internal review or external review? Okay, so the Australian Unemployed Workers Union represents people having issues with Centrelink. Thank you, Edward. You're giving us lots of great information. There's a question here, Christina. How to complain against the decision from Office of the Legal Services Commissioner, which rejected a complaint of negligence?
Never had that experience. Bridget, what type of?
So the Office of the Legal Services Commissioner is the external body that deals with complaints about lawyers.
Solicitors, yeah.
Yeah, so I would have thought that it might be a situation where perhaps you need to ask for detailed reasons for the decision. I don't think that there's a further avenue of review, but another thing that we should say, I guess, too, is that when an agency makes a decision, they're usually obliged to inform you of any appeals or review process that is available to you. I think in that instance, it's probably best to go back to the Office of the Legal Services Commissioner and seek, try and speak with somebody and see if you can get a better explanation so that you can understand why your complaint was not accepted. There's another comment here. The challenge is being told repeatedly to follow the proper process. When you can't read or understand the processes, then you need help, but the help rejects you because you haven't followed the process. That sounds very frustrating and as if you've been going around in circles with that. I think that there are a lot of great community and support workers out there who can help people negotiate those sorts of situations and provide support, or if you have family members that can support you, sometimes someone who's a step away from the situation is better able to assist. Another question, to whom should one complain when you're dissatisfied when living in a church-owned self-care independent living retirement village? I imagine that there must be a body that deals with complaints about those sorts of living arrangements. Are you aware of what that is off the top of your head, Christina?
No, sorry.
Okay, we'll have to take that question on notice and get back to you. Someone else has made a comment that Centrelink seem to have criteria which applicants have to meet, but applicants aren't aware of those criteria. If you fail to meet them, your application is automatically rejected. So where can you find out about this criteria? The whole process is frustrating and impossible. Peter, I think lots of people experience that. Centrelink is such a big government body. They have a website where you can usually look up the sort of benefit that you might be applying for if it's a benefit situation, and there should be links that take you to what the criteria are. But I would suggest that you call Legal Aid's law access number to ask for some help with that and a referral to a lawyer if they can't direct you. Law Access also has a very good website with lots of resources available. Another person has asked a question. I need to lodge an appeal with NCAT about a guardianship order, and it's a participant in the process who's asking. I would suggest that you ring our Law Access contact number and ask for a referral to get some legal advice about that situation. Someone's asking where I get help to write letters. If it's related to a legal issue, I suggest you contact our Law Access contact line and explain the situation and what you might need help with writing a letter about. And if it falls within our criteria, then you can get a referral to assistance for that. And our Law Access staff are very well informed about lots of different support agencies out there. So if it's not directly related to a legal issue, then they should be able to refer you to another organisation that can assist you. Another comment, a comment around the frustration of dealing with Centrelink. Giselle, I would suggest that you contact the Law Access line as well and see if you can get a referral to get some support with that process. Where can you find help to complete a Centrelink disability form? So that's an application for a disability support pension, I'm assuming. I think contact our Law Access line again. I know I'm referring everybody to that, but they can refer you to a support service close to you where somebody can sit down with you and assist you to complete that form. But I should have thought that Centrelink itself might have people that can assist you, and perhaps that suggestion of speaking with a Centrelink psychologist if you're having trouble with the form, they should have some internal supports there. Sometimes if you're not aware of them, you don't know to ask for them. Yes, someone else has very helpfully reminded us that if it's a Centrelink issue that somebody wants to query or contest, there is also the great Community Legal Centre Welfare Rights that specialises in social security law. So that's another great referral point. So yes, someone has said, based on the questions regarding Centrelink, is it possible to hold a session with Centrelink? Thank you for the suggestion. We have a specialist government law team within Legal Aid, and we will follow up with them about holding a session about Centrelink. There's just a few comments about frustration with accessing help. One person has said that a person over 80 wasn't able to get help from Law Access, but we don't have any restrictions on what age you have to be in order to get assistance through our services. So I would suggest that perhaps with a support person present, that person should try and contact Law Access again. People are just commenting about the frustration of trying to get help with actually completing the form. We might take some of these comments on notice and get back to you about perhaps other support services where people can get assistance with completing forms. Someone else has commented that Centrelink does have social workers in some offices that can help with forms and reviews. And someone has shared a website of an organisation based in Victoria, dsphelp.org.au. They assist via email. have to say, just as a response in relation to the frustration people are expressing with dealing with Centrelink, that many clients of legal aid have experienced the same problems, and that is why they end up coming to legal aid for assistance with review, internal review or external review. It doesn't look like we have any more questions, but just wanted to acknowledge the frustration that people are expressing in the difficulties that they experience in dealing with large government organisations. And we understand how frustrating that can be. And we will get back to you all in relation to those couple of questions that we took on notice. Christina, are there any restrictions on getting legal aid help?
Well, you'd have to call Law Access, and once they refer you, generally for legal advice, no, it would be free legal advice. It depends if it's an area of law that we can advise on. For example, certain negligence cases, that's not something that we give advice about, but generally you can go on our website and see what we would give advice on. And then if you need extensive representation or casework from there, again, that would depend on the case as well. So definitely check on our website or give Law Access a call for more information.
Yeah, just in terms of initial advice, as long as it's an area that legal aid gives advice in, and you fall within our priority client groups, then you would be able to get assistance from a solicitor at legal aid to get initial advice. For further assistance in terms of a grant of legal aid, there are tests such as a means test and a merit test that we have to apply in order to do work under a grant of aid. So there is information about those tests and the criteria for getting more substantial legal assistance on our website. There's a question, who would you contact for assistance with housing issues? So it would depend on what kind of housing you're in. If it's social housing, such as community or government housing, there are internal review processes there, but there are across the state a lot of tenancy advocate services, and one way to find out the closest advocacy service near you is to go on the Tenants Union website, and they have a postcode finder, and you can put in your postcode and they will tell you where your closest tenancy advocacy service is. Legal Aid also assists people with housing issues, more focused on termination of tenancy agreement and some other areas. So again, perhaps consider contacting our Law Access contact number and asking for a referral to your closest legal service, and they can also refer you to tenancy advice services as well. There's also just a comment that one person had some amazing help from our Burwood office along 30 years ago with child support. That's great. Thank you for that feedback. Is there a list of advocacy services? Well, each legal aid office usually has contact with its local support services in the area, because each office makes referrals locally. So it would depend on where you are, but I suggest again contacting Law Access. I would suggest contacting or having a look on the Tenants Union website in relation to some assistance in a housing situation. So I think that's all the questions and comments that we have. Thank you for being such an engaged audience this morning, and thank you, Christina, for your presentation. You will receive a survey in the email that is sent an hour after this webinar finishes, and feel free to ask any further questions or provide your feedback and suggestions, such as the suggestion about a Centrelink webinar. We're always very grateful to receive people's suggestions so that we can tailor the webinars that we run to the need that the community has. So thank you for that. And the information about the Ombudsman panel webinar next week will also be sent in the follow-up email. So thank you for joining us today, and hopefully you'll join us for another Legal Aid webinar soon.
Thanks, Bridget. Thanks, everyone.